Hi Kaushik, hi Shiva. Glad to have you guys here.
Hello, glad to be here.
Yeah, nice to meet you again.
In the last few weeks, we had discussed about the process evolution from agile to like from waterfall to agile to DevOps. And the last week, we talked about how to learn effectively. And this week, we will shift our attention to a very, very important question in a lot of young programmers' mind: how to become an architect. Kaushik, did you ever think about how to become an architect at any point in your career?
Yeah, multiple times. That it seems like a good natural career progression for a software engineer. So yeah, I've asked myself, how does one become an architect? What are the things that someone has to do to become an architect? It's not easy to find that out, right? So it's I've thought about that a lot in my career.
Absolutely. Today morning, I was actually trying to put my thoughts, on how to become an architect. And for that, we need to be able to define what the role of an architect is. And I was struggling to actually kind of create a big picture around what the role of an architect is. Shiva, what is the role of an architect? What are the things that you are looking for in somebody who wants to be an architect?
So, when we think about the role of an architect, it is kind of a multifaceted. Generally, when we think about tech lead or architect, the very first thing that comes to our mind is technology. What should you know?
Exactly.
What approaches you need to pick? All that. But there is a lot more to it. Yeah, being good at technology and knowing about various architectural styles, that is kind of a very expected skill. But in addition to it, there is a lot more thing, like you need to interact with a lot of people from different teams, like business teams, and then probably you are building an application that is one of the application in the larger ecosystem, and you need to integrate with a lot of other services and third party services, things like that. So you need to have a discussion with a lot of other folks. So communication skills and how do you put your thoughts forward. So these are all presentation skills. They are all come into picture. Yeah, one of the core skill is tech, but it needs a lot more to become a successful architect.
Absolutely right. So it's not just the technology part of it. Maybe as a programmer, you would be fundamental. You will be more focused on technology, but as you grow in your career, as you go towards maybe roles like tech lead and architect, technology becomes kind of like the role of technology becomes smaller in your role, and probably other things like probably communication, business knowledge. Those are some of the things that would play a much more important role. Kaushik, any other things that you would want, that are important other than like tech, business, and communication? Anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, the one thing that comes to mind is first of all, I agree with what Shiva said. The one thing that comes to mind is an architect is expected to scale their impact. If you have like a junior engineer or even like a senior engineer, they they code, they deliver some value, and it could be building a feature or something like that. An architect intentionally by design doesn't do that, because if they're doing that, they're just delivering that impact that they can churn out in terms of code. Instead, what an architect is supposed to do is scale their impact more than that, right? So instead of coding themselves, they're supposed to support others, give guidance to
Yeah.
others, lead a team, act like that leader, and increase the amount of impact that a single person has. This impact applies in a lot of different ways. It could be in setting up frameworks so that all teams can work faster. It could be in giving direction, saying, hey, let's not go this way, let's go that way. There are a lot of other ways in which you scale impact, and that's what is the most important thing I see in any architect role. How can you
Abs-
contribute in such a way that you not only help in your own productivity, but you help in the productivity of the others in the team who are working with you?
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point, Kaushik, right? You are an enabler to enable your team to be able to perform at a higher level, right? So and this actually probably cuts across a lot of things, right? Maybe like you touched upon frameworks, right? Setting up the frameworks in the best way so that they are reusable, right? So they are it's something like it's something setting up a standard as well, right? To set a standard, probably build a early use case kind of which sets the standard so that everybody else can follow. Maybe things like unit testing. So it's like setting the standard so that everybody can work at their best, kind of.
Yeah, in fact,
Awesome.
that is one of the challenge that most of the people face when they switch from individual contributor to a team lead or architect. So until that point, it is your productivity that dictates how productive you are, how valuable you are. But once
Right.
you step into team lead or architect role, it's no more what you deliver. It's like how much you contribute to others to deliver their stuff. So it's a big mind shift.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you are not really worried about your own productivity, but it's also, the most important concern for you is to enable your team to be really productive.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh,
That's a good
cool.
point. It's also about accountability, isn't it? So, like, let's say you're a junior engineer. Let's say the project doesn't go well, but you've been like a rock star contributor. You still get credit for it. But on the other
Exactly.
hand, if you're an architect and the project doesn't go well, even if you've done super contributions in terms of your code, if you haven't been able to steer the project the right way and the project fails, you as an architect is accountable for it. So that's a
Yeah.
big mindset change. I agree.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, so I think one of the things that we are looking at is the fact that it's like the role of an architect is not really well defined like probably it also changes from context to context, right? And probably that's the reason why we have so many different kinds of architects as well. So there's no one kind of an architect. You have application architect, system architect, enterprise architect. Probably because there are so many things that are involved in like in architecture, in being an architect. That's why probably like there are so many things, right? So as we discussed until now, like I see a lot of confusion on what an architect does and how do we define an architect and things like that, right? So let's assume somebody is very young, like he's getting started, like he's, let's say, a very very good programmer. He's able to do individual contribution very very well. Now he wants to start getting into architecture. He wants to be an architect, let's say, in 3 4 years. What are these things that they can do today to to start the journey towards becoming an architecture? Kaushik, shall we start with you?
Sure. My advice to them would be to focus on the end goal. I think that is what is a path to thinking the big picture. So let's say somebody's given a task and say, okay, you got to go finish it. Of course, one way is he or she takes the task, does what needs to be done, and then it's like, okay, I'm done with my job, right? And I have someone else take care of how it fits into the big picture. But I think shifting the focus to why you're doing something, why is my team lead asking me to do this, and what's the big picture, what is the reasoning behind all the other people in my team doing all these things. So if they were to shift focus to that, that is already thinking one level up, which is what you need to be thinking when you go to the
Right.
architecture. It's not just about you're not a popular way of saying this is the higher up you go in the career ladder, you go from being a task taker to a task maker, right? So as you get more and more experience, you're not going to be given a task with all the details and like, okay, go finish this, right? You're responsible for finding out details. Sometimes you'll be given tasks which may not have all the necessary details, or even incorrect requirements. Sometimes so it's your responsibility to go figure out, and the only way you can do it if you know what the big picture is,
Absolutely.
like why are we doing something. So that is the when you start asking why, where are we going, what is the direction, why are we doing this task versus something else, that is going to lead the way to thinking big picture. And that would be the best advice I can give to somebody who's starting now. He or she should just look at the why.
Absolutely. So focus on the why, try and understand what is happening in the project and why it is happening in that specific way. And also, when you're making choices, probably you'd want to figure out why a specific choice was made. If, let's say, a specific framework or a specific tool or specific technology is made use of, try and figure out why. The important question is not the decision to choose the thing, but it's about why the decision was made and the reasons behind it. Uh, Shiva, anything you would want to add?
Yeah, already pretty much you covered, but one more thing I want to add is as a developer, right? You focus on a task level, like how I can write in a cleaner manner, how I can organize this package, how each package communicates with other package. So kind of your focus will be on at the implementation level. But when you are thinking of becoming a tech lead or architect, you need to take a step back and think at the system level, like what are the other systems you are integrating with, how you are going to handle if communication fails. For example, you are talking to some other system, if it fails, how do you handle it? And is there any constraints you are running in, like maybe you are building an application that is running in a constrained environment. So is your application
Absolutely.
accommodates those kind of constraints. So you need to take a step back and then think at the overall system level than at the task level. So
Correct.
yeah, one approach I would suggest is, though you are a developer and you need to take care of the task, always try to see why your architect is making a certain decision. What is the rationale behind that approach? Why they are selecting so and so tech stack as opposed to other options? So
Absolutely.
because one day suddenly you will be put into that role, and if you don't know or you are not prepared for it, it is going to be overwhelming. So you have to take a step back and then observe how others are doing, what mistakes they are making. So all these kind of things you need to observe before actually stepping into that role. That will be a kind of a bit smoother transition.
Absolutely. So understanding why and also understanding the architecture where your application fits in. It's not just about your box, your application box. It's also about how your application fits in the enterprise and understanding how it communicates with other systems and also understanding the thought process and rationale behind that. Right.
Yeah.
Kaushik,
The
any
one
other
thing,
things?
yeah, sorry. The one thing I wanted to add was, just to clarify, when you ask why, it is not in the sense of challenging them, like, why are you doing this? Why not do something else? The why
Yeah.
is in an attempt to learn, right? You're asking questions because
Absolutely.
you're seeking information, you're learning. So if you go with that attitude, I think that's that's what I think me and Siva are talking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So architect is basically a decision maker, and to be able to make decisions, you should get into the habit of understanding what decisions were made
Right.
earlier, right? That the more experience you have, I mean, it's the problem is, I think architecture is not something you can go and attend a session and learn because you might understand the process of how to do things, but the decision making is something you which evolves, right? And that decision making is what I think we are focusing on, right? The
Right.
moment we are actually thinking about why you are equipping yourself with the knowledge to make more decisions in kind of in the future. Awesome. Any other things that somebody who's beginning to be an architect can focus on, Shiva?
Mm, So let us take an example instead of talking at the theoretical level. Suppose
Mhm.
you are working in an enterprise, and then there are already a lot of applications which are talking to each other, and then you are building a new component in the whole ecosystem. Right now, suppose you are trying to architect that particular system. So now, as an architect, now the very first thing to understand is, where does your application that you are going to build fit into the overall system, and with what other applications it is going to integrate with, and what kind of a communication it is going to expected, like is it synchronous REST API communication, or is it more of an event based system. So having a good understanding of what architectural style fits for this particular piece, which again integrates with the overall ecosystem, is an important thing. Like
Absolutely.
sometimes you need to weigh the pros and cons of it. Suppose you have a choice of going with the REST API or gRPC or event-based system. So you need to understand what fits for your particular application, which architectural style fits more. And after
Mhm.
that, there are in many times, right? There are very time sensitive integrations. For example, you are supposed to execute some batch process and then upload some data to other systems. So you need to understand those constraints also. It is not like whenever you do that is fine. There are sometimes time sensitive jobs that you need to perform. So understanding all that context, it's like you need to come up with a blueprint where you can see big picture. Okay, in the whole
Absolutely.
system, this is where this application is going to play, what kind of a role it plays. So once you
Absolutely.
understand that big picture, you can take a step back and then evaluate all the approaches. Like, should I go with a REST API? Should I build an event-driven system? Do I need to have a event sourcing in place? So all that thing again comes from the business, actual business requirement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. What we are flowing from now is from technology, we are taking a step up and probably thinking also about the business needs, right? So you need to understand the business needs before you'll be able to architect a solution as such. And how can like let's say a programmer, like somebody who's in the individual capability now wants to start understanding more about business and wants to also be able to improve his communication skills. Kaushik, what are the things that somebody can do to improve their business knowledge and also the communication skills aspect of things?
For me, working with stakeholders has really helped a lot. When somebody is, in any business context, there are a lot of people who are involved in getting a feature from ideation to delivery, right? They have people who are really embedded in the business. They know exactly what they need. And then there are
Mm,
people along the way to get to the implementation phase and delivery. There is QA and all that stuff. So I think having good relationship with all these different people and
absolutely.
talking to them, understanding from them is a good way to get started. Also, I believe that when you're having these meetings and it's so often it's happened, somebody tells something that I don't understand. I make it a point to follow up and learn about it afterwards, right?
Mm,
So it's basically like there are a lot of what's referred to as unknowns, right? There are things that I don't know, and I don't even know that that's a gap in my knowledge, right? So it's when those things are uttered where I don't understand what that is. That is a way for me to, it becomes a known unknown at that point. So whenever I get a known unknown, I immediately go and clarify it. So that has helped me a
absolutely.
lot in the past in terms of getting business knowledge, because they're the experts. They don't know how to communicate well for
Absolutely.
programmers, because we tend to speak a different language. So when there are those sparks of information, we just grab it as soon as possible. That's how I improve my business knowledge, which is what I asked, which is what you asked, I guess. Was there a second
Absolutely.
part to that
Absolutely.
question?
The second part was more on the communication skills. So, how do I like if you like as we grow up, like communication becomes a very very important part because probably you are working with a lot more people in your day to day job. And the other aspect I see also about communication is with respect to reviews, right? A lot of times you are reviewing somebody else's work or somebody is reviewing your work. So as you grow up, handling reviews also, I mean, handling communication related to reviews also becomes a very very important thing. So what can somebody who's starting up in his career do to improve those aspects?
Communication for me in general, whether somebody's starting up in their career or somebody who's an experienced person, communication is all about empathy. It's about understanding the other person's perspective. It's not
Mm,
about fluency of language. It's not about your accent. It's not about your vocabulary. It's about empathy. If you know what the other person is thinking or feeling when they are saying something to you, you can understand what they're saying better, and you can tell the right words and the right sentences so that they understand what you're saying better, because you know where they are at that point. So I think that's about it. Empathy comes from a lot of different sources. It comes from listening properly. So a big part of
absolutely.
communication is listening, after all. So listen to what someone else is saying, understand what their problems are, what their pain points are. Especially if you're dealing with somebody like a business person, right? Understanding their life, what trouble they are going through, why they need help, what are they asking for. That is a big help in terms of communicating with them, and that's true for communicating with anybody else.
Absolutely.
I would
Absolutely. I
I
think
would like to add one point to this listening part. So typically, we developers with a technical background, when we went into a meeting with business folks, when they start saying, "Okay, this is what we are trying to achieve," and all, unknowingly we start thinking about how we can implement this. Okay, they are talking about some batch. Okay, unknowingly our mind goes into, okay, should I use quads? Should I use just a small any scheduling library? So you need to stop that first. Otherwise, you are going to lose what they are saying. So you should completely stop that developer mode, listen to what they are saying, and understand it. Then you can go back and then think how we can achieve that. But if you are keep
Absolutely.
on switching that mode, okay, the point they are saying, and then immediately you are thinking about how to implement it, you are going to miss a lot of information that they are saying further. So
Yeah.
just need to stop that thinking and completely listen to what they are saying.
Yeah, that happens with me even today. Somebody says, okay, this is a change we need to
Most of the
make. You are
time.
already thinking about, okay, how to implement that? What is the architectural change I need to make? Things like that, right? So absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so
One more
we are
thing.
talking about
Yeah, one more
please
thing, like
Ash.
empathy, right? Kaushik mentioned empathy. Often, what I noticed is when we talk to business folks, right, they may not be well aware of this tech side of aspects. They say in a very layman style. They talk in terms of business. When you are talking to business folks, your language needs to be in a business oriented. Don't talk about class methods and class paths and all those things. It's not going to make any sense. You talk in terms of how a business person can understand. So we need to bring it down, all these technical terms, speak in a way where business folks can understand. um, I see a lot of times this happen, like developers
Yeah.
trying to interact with the business folks. Unknowingly, they keep throwing all these tech words, which business folks might not understand. Then starts a disconnect happens. So we need to tune our language where a layman can understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And communicating in the language of the business. And like, I think that's kind of the thing as you grow up, as you meet more and more people. Maybe early in the career, you're only working with directly with technology people, like other developers, maybe an architect who already understands technology. But as you start growing up, you would interact with business, you would probably need to interact with management, leadership, and therefore your language should also change based on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's perfect, Shiva. I mean, let's probably get back a little bit to technology, right? One of the biggest things that we talked about with respect to architect is making decisions. And to be able to make decisions, we need to equip with ourselves with knowledge about what is happening in the industry. What are the trends that are happening in the industry? Uh, like, what would be your advice for somebody to keep up with the trends? Or Kaushik, what do you do to keep up with the trends on what's happening in the industry?
What I do to keep up with the trends. I don't know if I quite keep up with the trends, to be honest, because there are so many things that go on. The one hack that I have to make sure I'm on track as much as possible is I let information come to me. I don't seek
Okay.
information. It's more of a pull model than a push model. I guess it works both ways. Anyway, what I do is rather than me going and fetching information, seeing okay what is
Right.
new, because I might forget to do that. Instead, I would have sources where information is pushed to me. It can result
Okay.
in a lot of noise sometimes, but if you're looking
Uh,
at the right sources, that can be very useful. So, for example, I want to keep up to date with what's happening in the Spring world, right? So I have
right.
a Spring has a blog, like they have I think it's blog.spring.io. They have a good blog where they keep all the updates coming, good articles, and they have an RSS feed. Okay, so I just use an RSS reader. I've got that subscribed. Anytime I open it,
Yeah.
I get the Spring content right there, and I have like key blogs. InfoQ is one. The Oracle Java blog is another one. So I have these key blogs, and I organized it,
Okay.
and that's how I get information. And the advantage of this is like, and I had some people say, well, why don't you go to Twitter? Why don't you go to Facebook and all that? The problem with those platforms is those platforms are not meant to be information resources, right? They're supposed
Mhm.
to, they have been built to get you in and suck you in and waste your time.
Exactly.
So that's
Yeah.
the reason
Yeah.
why I don't go to Twitter or Facebook or any of those social media platforms to get my news. I have my RSS feed, so I only get the news that I need, and that helps a bit. I still don't think I'm up to date with all of the things that are happening, but I try my best, and this is how I do it.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I don't think social media is the best place if you are looking at trends. There is a lot of there's more noise than like valuable information out
Yeah,
there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
more noise. Yeah.
Shiva, what do you do?
My approach would be, I think, quite opposite to Koushik. I'll explain. Because what I do, I try to grab as much as information as possible, but I don't go into deep and learn everything. Just I kind of know about what's going on. And okay, now we have serverless platforms and many other things. And then there are many trends and NFTs, blockchain. I don't know many of them. Just I get to know there are things going on, and okay, these things fits into these domains. Okay, they are into this particular cloud platforms or these architectural styles. I just have a very 10,000 feet view of it. I don't go into detail of everything. Just I'm being aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
And when I get a need, I just have a pointer. Okay, that is something I may need to look into it. Probably that is a best fit for this use case. But
Okay.
again, keeping up with all the things that is going on out there is next to impossible. Just I try to
Absolutely.
maintain pointers only. And another
Absolutely.
thing is, earlier I am active on Twitter. I am very active than I should be.
Yeah. Okay.
And earlier it used to be like a very informative. Like I get to know of, I follow a lot of good people on Twitter, and I get to know a lot of information about technology and all. These days it is a lot of 80% noise, only 20% information. So I'm kind of
Absolutely.
slowly taking a step back from Twitter now. I am not active on any other social media actually. Uh, but yeah, keeping up is really hard. What I do is I try to just make a 10,000 feet view of what's going on, and just based on need, I'll dig deeper into it if need be.
Awesome. Okay. So I think, yeah, one thing you were talking about is Twitter changing a lot in the last few years. Absolutely. When I started off, actually, like I was very, very interested in things like four principles of simple design. I mean, coding and things like that. And I followed a few people related to that, and it was really, really good because when I go to Twitter, I was seeing really, really nice information about okay something they are talking about specific to that. But over a period of time, I see that, as you say, the noise is much more. And today, probably, I go to Twitter only when I have something to publish. I hardly go to Twitter when to read to like get some knowledge or something of that kind. Absolutely. And another interesting aspect I saw was surveys, right? There are a lot of surveys and trends which are published by different organizations. Are there any things that you follow in particular? For example, I love the thoughtworks radar that they publish every 6 months. I feel that's a great place to just go and understand, not just in my world, because my world is pretty restricted, right? I'm maybe in a Java microservice cloud DevOps world, but in the big picture, what are the other things happening and things like that? I feel I get a good understanding if I read the thought work radar every 6 months. Are there any other tips like that you do? I mean, any other surveys or trends that you follow uh, like regularly?
Uh,
I can take
yeah,
that.
Kaushik, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I do see follow a couple of surveys. There is a state of JavaScript survey for the front end side of things.
Hmm.
They didn't do, I think I remember they didn't do one in 2021, but there is one they've just opened the survey this year. But that has
Okay.
been a good resource for what's happening in the JavaScript side of things. There was one more. JetBrains has a Java ecosystem survey, which is also pretty
Absolutely.
interesting to see what people are doing. It does have a bit of a JetBrains angle to it. If there is a
Yeah.
commercial involvement in these surveys, they usually, try to use that survey to promote their products. I'm not saying
Exactly.
everybody does, but that's an opportunity for them. But yeah, if you set that aside, if you just look at the data, that's another interesting survey. Yeah, I don't think I kind of follow like at a survey level. It's again
Okay.
news that comes to me via these
Okay.
blogs and all those things that I follow. At that point, I go look, okay, what's happening. So that's how I do it.
Perfect. Perfect. Shiva, do you follow any surveys?
Actually, I take a look at this ThoughtWorks radar, but most of the times I rely upon these presentations, especially from InfoQ and go to DevOps. So these channels, they have wonderful presentations, and then many senior architects and all, they share their experiences, their use case, their success stories. So how they actually go with some approach, what they used, and how they failed, and how they make their systems better. So they a lot of people share their real time experience, not just how to do tutorials. So
Okay,
that is
okay.
where I see most of the value. Like you get to know real experience from the people who actually put their systems into production. That's what
Okay.
I listen to most.
Awesome. Shiva, it's interesting that you worked for ThoughtWorks, you're not working, you worked for ThoughtWorks and you are underplaying the radar. Probably there's something internal that you know which I don't know.
No, it is just overwhelming when you see four tridents and there are too much
Okay.
of information. And then
Okay.
unknowingly, I thought of at least, okay, let me see what this is about, what this is about. It's like there
Yeah,
are a million things there. I get overwhelmed.
absolutely.
So
No, no,
I take
absolutely.
a step back. Yeah.
No, no, that's right because that covers almost ambit of everything which is happening around the technology world.
Yeah.
So it does get really overwhelming. A lot of times, actually, I have a printout, and like to read that through, probably I take 1 or 2 days usually.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Even,
absolutely, it's a
even if you try to get that 10,000 feet view also, it is too
yeah,
much of information for me.
no, no, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's awesome, right? Um,
So far, we are talking about the architect role, right? Like how to become architect, what needs to be considered. When we talk about tech lead role, though there is a big overlap with both the roles, architect and tech lead, I see tech lead role is a very challenging compared to architect. Both are challenging, but for the tech lead role, a lot more things come into picture. When we see tech lead gets to spend a lot more time with the team members than architect. Both have to spend good amount of time with the team members to be on the same page what they are building. But when I see tech lead, they are kind of a day to day, they interact a lot more than architect. I see tech lead role, playing the tech lead role is a lot more challenging, not because of the technical reasons, but because of the other reasons. Like already Kaushik mentioned, you need to have empathy. You need to see things in a different way. Uh, and also, I see this common pattern when somebody be promoted from senior developer to tech lead role. The very first time anybody playing tech lead role is a kind of very hard. At least it is so hard for me, and I made a lot of mistakes, and then I learned from others, and then my own mistakes. It's a lot more challenging.
Shiva, do you want to talk a little bit more about the challenges that you faced when you
Sure,
started with
sure.
the tech role?
Sure. So, like I already mentioned, like when I got into a tech lead role, it is not so easy to switch automatically, thinking that it is not my own achievements. It is all about the team delivery. It's not about how fast you can do. It is about how entire delivery going. So you will end up spending more time in meetings and helping others, and at the end of the day, absolutely, you might not write a single line of code, which we don't
Okay,
use to. At the end of the day, as a developer, you are like, okay, I implemented so and so feature, that's what I achieved. But and also as a developer, right, we have, at least I have, okay, meetings, I don't like meetings, I don't want to sit in meetings for too long. I
absolutely.
hate meetings. So, but when you step into this tech lead role, right, you will have to be in meetings a lot of time. So you need to sit with BA and coordinate how to transform those business requirements into technical stories. You have to spend time with them, and also you
Absolutely.
need to convey what we are trying to achieve as a team to developers. There could be junior developers who are not familiar with either tech stack or the approaches. So you need to communicate to them. So there is a high chance that you will end up spending so much time in meetings and you write
Absolutely.
absolutely zero lines of code for weeks also sometimes. So kind of you feel like, am I doing the right thing? I'm sitting in meetings, and what if someday my manager asks, what did you did? I don't have an answer.
Absolutely.
Like all I can say is I help the team. But
Absolutely.
the important thing to understand is that is your role. helping the team is your role. It is not like how many stories you completed. That's not your role or your responsibility. So it is easy as to say that, but in practice, it's not so easy to take that. Luckily, I
Absolutely.
have a few people that helped me to get over this. Like one day, one of my mentor called me and said, "Dude, you already worked on so many Spring Boot applications. You know, control writing controller service, and you have done a billion times now. It is not what people expect out of you. It is like there are other 6, 7 team members. Teach them.
Right.
Instead, you sitting in a corner and then writing all that code, probably you can do it faster, but there is a limit to it. But if you teach other folks and bring them up to your speed, it's a lot more productivity. That's what you are supposed to do, not like I can do better, I can do faster. There is a limit
Absolutely.
to it. So
Absolutely.
I have a luxury of having those mentors, and yeah, that's how I learn.
Right. So you're talking about the mindset change. Like I think when you become the tech lead is when that first mindset change needs to happen, right? So
Yeah,
when you become an architect is probably far away, but when you just become a tech lead is the first time you are not just responsible for what you are delivering, but you are
yeah,
now like having more responsibilities, and probably you are not writing code as much as earlier. And
yeah,
yeah, if you are thinking of code as the thing that you are delivering, probably that's not the mindset you need to have.
yeah.
Perfect.
Another common challenge that I faced, I guess most of the people also face this, like business always wants to deliver more within short span of time. And as a tech team, you want to deliver more quality product, which obviously takes more time. So there is
Absolutely.
always this tension between, no, we want to go to production faster. And you say, if you are expecting us to deliver that faster, code is going to get mess, and then every release gets harder. So initially, I don't know how to tackle this. I was like a
Right.
straight upfront saying that no, we can't do it. We can't deliver in
Mm,
a month all these 10 features. It didn't go well. It's always kind of it didn't go well, to put it in
mm.
smooth way. Uh, Luckily, I have one of mentor. One day he called me and he said, "See, this head-to-head fight won't work out in IT. And no matter the company, in most of the companies, it's always be like this. They want features faster. They want to go as fast as possible. And on the other side, you want to do a good job, because if you do a bad job, it is going to get harder and harder. For every release, things become messy. So
Absolutely.
only possible way to move forward is both sides should come to an agreement, middle ground. So instead of saying that no, I can't deliver this within a month, you have to go and say I can't deliver all these 10 features. I can deliver only these 7 features, and I need not 30 days. I need 45 days. So you reduce number of features and you ask a little bit more time, and then reasonable people, they can see, okay,
Right.
he's trying to complete the project and he is asking a little bit of more time. So there is a highly chance that they agree to it, that rather than saying no, give me 2 months and I will deliver all the 10 features. It's not
Absolutely.
going to work. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think it's negotiation skills, right? So you should
yeah,
start developing skills because you don't want business has its needs. The technical team, or actually, I mean, in the entire, if you look at the bigger context, I mean, having good quality code is very, very important even for business as well. So, I mean, business has immediate needs and you have the long term needs. So, probably it's the trade off between the short term needs versus the long term needs, and being able to communicate that really, really well, right? So, I think Kaushik, you have anything to add there?
No, I agree that Shiva touched upon an important point where when you're a tech lead, or it's sometimes referred to as team lead as well. Sometimes teams have team leads and tech leads. One very important responsibility is you are the voice of the team to others who are not a
Mm,
direct part of the team. So you're responsible for making these negotiation calls, like Shiva mentioned. So that is a big change and a big step up for somebody who is getting into that role. We were talking about things that we found difficult when you get to a tech lead position. For me, the very difficult part was delegation of work, because again, you start out with doing everything yourself.
Absolutely.
And there was this point of time when I had to, that was my first role as a tech lead, right? I wasn't good, I didn't know how to do this. It was like, yeah, this work to be done, well, I'm going to jump on it and I'm going to do it. So I had to switch to the mindset of, okay, this work needs to go to somebody else. And
Right.
in my head, I'm the best programmer in the world, obviously. So it's like,
Absolutely.
there is a bit of, okay, now if I were to give this to that person, they may not do a good job, or I may not agree with
Mm,
some of the things that they do. It's the same struggle. So that would took a little of getting used to. Okay, why
absolutely.
do I have to give that to that person and teach them while I can do that in 50% of the time, right? So it's like
Right.
there was a point when I was like, okay, I need to stop. This is not about me and my performance, it's about the team. And this is true with any team sport, right? So you play a
Mm,
team sport, you help each other out, and you want everybody to succeed as a team, and that's only when that happens that the team wins. So that was the mind shift change that I had to do. But good news is, once that happens, it becomes very easy afterwards. It's just that one point, one time transition that needs to happen. At least that's the way it was for me.
awesome. Yeah, delegating things is something which I'm not even good at today. Like as a programmer, I it's like you want to solve every problem by yourself, right? So yeah, getting that mindset to change, and even today, probably that's something which I am not really good at. Maybe that's because I'm not good at doing reviews, right? I mean, I think if you are able to delegate, I mean, if you want to start delegating, then you should be good at reviewing things, right? I think like code reviews or design reviews or architecture reviews or any other reviews, right? So those become really, really important. How has your experience with reviews been, Shiva? What have you learned about reviews in the last few years of doing a lot of reviews?
Yeah. Sometimes, even after delegating, occasionally a tech lead or anybody who is playing the key role becomes a bottleneck. Like if there are a lot of key PRs that are waiting for review, where somebody says, better to get a review from that guy. He knows more context about it. So there is a chance that
Exactly.
you become bottleneck. So like Koushik mentioned, right? You can do it faster, but
Mm,
you have to invest this time where educating others and upskilling them slowly. It makes them also more knowledgeable, and then it gives a good results in the long run. Maybe it looks like, okay, today if I take up that task as well, I can complete it in half the time, but that's not going to scale. You have to
mm,
educate the others also, so that they should be able to review all those peers, not just you. So that's a time investment you have to make. And again, coming to code reviews, right? Most of the times, we all developers have strong opinions on how to write it. My style is always the right style. So you
mm,
need to bring it down and then see there are different people have different aesthetics, and they have their own preferences. And then you have to decide as a team and then proceed further. Just uh, as a success criteria for you as a tech lead or architect, right? How much free time you have, that is kind of an indicator how successful you are. If you are busy all the times, there is something wrong you are doing. You got to have some free time so that you can take a step back and see overall picture, how are we moving in the right direction or not. But if you are occupied all the times doing everything by yourself, checking and verifying everything by yourself, there is something to rethink and then take a step back.
yeah, yeah. So if you're busy doing individual things, then probably it's time to step back and see who else might be able to do that,
Yeah.
and yeah, kind of get into review things. Kaushik, anything that you'd want to add on the review side of things?
I would look at having consistency over subjective opinions, because if something is
Absolutely. Yeah.
objectively wrong, that anybody looks and goes, well, that's wrong, well, you got to fix that. And the sooner in the development process you fix it, the better. So for example, code style checks,
Mm,
you don't want to get code style issues in the review, right? Make sure you've set up your project so that anybody who's working on this, let's say example of a Java project, right? Set up the code style so that you open the project in IntelliJ, you save the file, it just automatically formats. So you've basically removed a
Absolutely.
huge review load off of the team's shoulders, right? That's
Exactly.
what I do the very first time. When I'm getting into a team, I make sure these standards are consistent, so people don't even have to
Right.
think about it. And then for things that you cannot automate and standardize this way, there is still benefit to have consistency. Okay, so let's take a controversial example of tabs versus spaces, for example,
Mhm.
right? So this is like I'm very much in one camp, but I'm just giving an example of where people might be in two different camps. So say that, as a documentation or something like that, say, okay, in this project, we're going to be using spaces, and
Mhm.
that's what we're going to use consistently, right? So that kind of gives you a place to stand on and say, well, everybody else is using spaces, so you should be
Exactly.
using spaces. So that
Yeah.
kind of makes, even though it's a subjective opinion, you can
Yeah.
still make it objective because that's what we do for this project.
Absolutely.
But for other areas where things aren't that clear, I look at it as a teaching opportunity. It's we talk about scaling our impact, and for me, it's that was a transition that I had to do. Initially, it was like, yeah, I can do it faster. Well, that's not a very wise thing to do, right? I learned my lesson. So now when I see code reviews where, okay, this is something that can happen and again, it's a teaching opportunity. People
Absolutely.
learn from code reviews. Junior developers learn from code reviews. It is an
Absolutely.
opportunity for senior developers to impart knowledge. As long as you impart knowledge in a way that's not just fix this one thing, but as a teaching
Exactly.
opportunity, it reframes the whole thing, and the whole team grows as a result. And I love to teach in any format anyway. So I use the opportunity of code reviews as well to be a gentle teacher, so that people understand and learn. And I also learn from others, even if whether it's a junior developer or senior, doesn't matter. Everybody has something to teach and learn from others. So that's how I look at it.
Actually,
Absolutely.
I'm
I think
about to
one.
say that. I'm about to say that, like, it's not always a junior developer. What happens is, as you work over the years, you unknowingly know a working approach, and you always follow along. And sometimes juniors who don't know about that approach, they may simply ask, "Why are we doing this?" Until that moment, you don't even think about, okay, there are other approaches also, because that is working for you, that is good enough. So sometimes those junior developers take question, and then that makes you think, actually, do I need to do that here? So this is always something that I learn from juniors, like, because they don't accustomed to this kind of common way of doing things, they simply question, why do we need to do
Absolutely.
this? uh, Many times I experienced wonderful changes because of this questioning. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think habits, like you have habits you continue to follow. Maybe the time has changed. Maybe there are a lot of things which change, but we still continue to follow those habits. And Kaushik, you also brought in a lot of important points therein, right? Consistency. I think that's kind of one of the major goals of an architect, right? Setting up consistency in the project. And if you are growing up as an architect or like, I mean, tech lead architect, as you go up in the project, probably setting up consistency across the enterprise, right? It's starting from the enterprise standards. What are the standards that you want to set at the enterprise level? What are the standards you would want to set at the application level? Deciding that, I think, is one of the most important part, right? It's not just like coding standards, but now the standards can be about, okay, I want to use only this specific cloud, or I want to use only this specific framework in my enterprise, or what flexibility do you want to give to projects to choose, what flexibility, like what are the things you are rigid about. I think deciding those things are some of the most important decisions that architects make. Any experiences you want to share around that, Shiva or Kaushik?
Yeah. Again, coming back to these standards, right? Everyone has their preferences, and if you keep it open forever, people are willing to spend days and days debating which one is better. I
Right.
I prefer to have a discussion, say a day, and then automate it using check style or whatever code styles you want to, and then be done with it. Don't because these are not the things that are going to bring so much value. These are good,
Absolutely.
very good conventions, and then following one particular standard across the entire application is very important. That's why it needs to be automated as quick as possible. So
Absolutely.
they are not the things that I want to spend more time discussing again and again. So
Absolutely.
That's one of the
Absolutely.
thing that I just automated. And then
So yeah,
other discussions you can have about the approaches and all those things. In fact,
absolutely.
in most of the applications that I work with, like it is a common thing, right? In Java Spring Boot application, you configure all this check style and PMD, all these kind of tools. I even created a human-based generator with all this configuration is ready. You don't have to start from scratch. Everything is pre-configured. So that's what I do. Be done with it one time. And in fact, that
Absolutely.
is one of the part I like Golang. You don't have a say in that where to put the brace, like open brace. In Java, there are people who prefer it the end of the line, who prefer it on the new line. In Golang, you don't
Hmm.
have a say in it. There is only one way, otherwise it won't compile. So done with it.
Okay. Good, good, good. So automation of standards is also very, very important, right? So whatever you can automate, you'd want to automate. I mean, it's not, I guess, if I take a high level picture around that, if I take it to the next level, it's not just the coding standards, but maybe even like if you want security standards, like all the checks, whatever you can automate. One of the important roles of an architect is to automate uh, like all the like as many standards as you can possibly can. Obviously not a lot of things can be automated, but whatever can be automated, probably we should focus on automating them and making it part of the process, so that there are no debates around it, right? So it's, you don't want discussions on things which are trivial most of the times, right? So things like, for example, the point you're making, braces on which line, right? Probably yeah, as long as we are consistent across the project, it does not matter whether you go for style 1 or style 2. So absolutely, absolutely. And Kaushik was talking about also the change in mindset when we talk about the reviews, right? I think that's also very, very important. The it like I think everybody who's involved in the reviews have to have the mindset of seeing it as a place where you add value, rather than seeing it as a place where we find faults with somebody, right? So like the goal of a review at the end is probably to add value to the business and to people, right? We would want to ensure that whatever review suggestions which we are giving would give a value to the application in the long run, and also help the person who is involved, like the people who are involved in the review, take the next step up. And lovely, actually, I love the point, like Kaushik made about it, seeing it as a teaching opportunity, right? I mean, I think that's wonderful way to look at it, because a lot of times we look at reviews more as a fault finding exercise rather than as teaching opportunity. And that mindset change, if we can have in the entire team, to see reviews as a opportunity to learn, I think that would be really, really good way, because then you have more probably productive discussions, rather than yeah, I think that would bring a lot of change in how people see reviews. Awesome.
The thing is, it's helpful to look at code reviews like test cases. So when you run a unit test case, you're testing not just the way the code works now, but that it continues to work in the future, right? So you can test
Absolutely.
now. That's not a big deal. It's probably quicker to test your code now than to write a unit test case. So the point of the test case is not to test the current state of the code. The point of the
Mm-hmm.
test is to check for future, right? Similarly, you apply that same concept to code reviews, right? The point of giving a code review is not just to fix the current mistake in our correction or improvement in the currently submitted change. It is to inform your teammate or any other person who's, the developer who's working on this, so that they don't make they don't commit the same patterns, or they don't, fall into that same trap in the future as well. So that's where the teaching opportunity comes into play. And once you do that, once you do it right, you're informing your audience, and they learn, and they make sure that they incorporate it for future reviews as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sure, we are thinking about, okay, I think we have 5 more minutes. So any other things that you'd want to touch upon quickly?
Nothing major, but one thing that I constantly notice as a tech lead, having empathy. Already Kaushik touched upon it, and as a team, right? When you think about the overall productivity of the team, the more good relationship you have with the team, the more better it is. Like it is highly likely that you are going to deliver better because of the good relationship with you have with the team. if there is anything, they are highly likely to open up and then say, okay, we are not doing this good in this particular area. They can open up and then say, then probably there is a chance that you can solve it. But if you don't have a good relationship, it is hard to identify those problems, because if you don't know there is a problem exists, you can't solve it, right? But to for the people to come up to you and say it, you need to have that kind of environment.
Right.
That is one thing. And another thing you need to, as a tech lead, understand is people have bad days. Even most superstar of your team who wonderfully works and deliver all time can have a bad day and sometimes, and they might not be productive on that day. So you
Absolutely.
need to understand that probably they have a fight with their wife in the morning and they are pissed off and they might not be productive on that day. So kind of you need to understand, okay, sometimes people be in a bad state in their personal lives, and don't push them on those days. Just leave a couple of days, then they can get back and they can be more productive. So these are the things, right? When we talk about tech lead role, we don't really touch upon them. We keep focusing on the technical areas, how we can be productive. So there is a
Absolutely.
human side of it. So you
Absolutely.
need to keep in mind that as well. It's very important.
Absolutely. Perfect, Shiva. Any other things that you want to talk about, Kaushik?
No, I want to stress again the importance of the human connection. You are going to be working with people. I see one common thing being said that, I don't, people say they switch, they have this idea of, okay, I've spent so many years in the industry, I have to go either as a manager or I become an architect. And some people I'm going to go the architect role because I don't like working with people. Manager, you got to work with people. And I go, no, 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 no. As an architect, you have to work
Oh
with
my
a lot of people, right?
God.
So
Absolutely.
if you don't want to work with people, you can, I don't know what like, you can be a freelancer. Even for a freelancer, you have to work with people. So it's like
Exactly.
you cannot avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to highlight again the importance of good interpersonal skills, empathy, listening, caring for others. You are working as a team, so wishing for the well-being of the team is always important. So I think that's a very important requirement for a tech lead, a team lead, an architect, all those roles.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think some wonderful points there, Kaushik and Shiva. I mean, I'm really, really glad that we had this discussion. I think there are a lot of important points that somebody who's starting off on an architect journey, like that's important for them, that we discussed in this specific video. I think one of the things which I observed over this conversation is, like, we started with technology, but at the end, the focus was completely on communication and interpersonal skills. That's absolutely the most important thing, right? As we grow in our career, it's not just the work you do, it's about how do you get the best out of other people, and the interpersonal skills are what matters over there. Lovely having that discussion with you, Kaushik and Shiva. I'm looking forward to the next discussion. Glad to have you guys here.
As always, glad to be here, Ranga.